We spoke with over 900 women between the ages of 50 and 70 and asked them a very direct question. When you notice a man who is over the age of 60, what parts of his body do you actually pay attention to first? The responses were honest and in many cases surprising before answering. Many of the women smiled and said something interesting. They explained that most men assume the wrong things. When men try to guess what women notice first, they usually say the same answers: chest, height, shoulders, or muscle size. But the women in our conversation said those guesses missed the point entirely. After 60, attraction works differently. Women in this stage of life are not comparing men to 25-year-olds. They are not looking for perfect physiques or unrealistic standards of youth. Instead, they quietly observe signals that reveal something much deeper. They look for signs of energy, self-respect, and engagement with life. One woman explained it in a very simple way. She said, "When I see a man now, I'm not asking how young he looks. I'm asking whether he still looks alive." That comment appeared again and again in different forms during our conversations. What these women were really describing is something psychologists often call nonverbal presence. Long before anyone speaks, the body communicates small details about how a person lives. These signals reveal habits, discipline, confidence, and even attitude toward aging. Some of these signals appear immediately when a man walks into a room. Others become noticeable only after a few seconds of observation. In this video, we are going to walk through 7 specific body areas that women in the survey consistently mentioned. Each one reveals something about how a man takes care of himself and how present he still is in life. Some of these body parts may sound obvious at first, but the psychological meaning behind them is what most men never realize. And the body part ranked number 1 was mentioned by more women than anything else on the list. But before we move forward, I want to ask you something. Where are you watching from today? Drop your city or country in the comments below. It is always fascinating to see how far the personality psychology with Isabella community reaches around the world. Now let's begin with the first body signal women notice almost immediately when they see a man approaching. One thing became very clear during those conversations with women over 50. Their way of noticing men had changed. When they were younger, attraction often followed the same patterns many people talk about today. Height mattered, muscles mattered, youth mattered. Physical intensity and appearance played a large role in first impressions. But after 60, something different begins to happen. Women explain that their attention shifts away from raw physical features and moves towards signals of how a man lives his life. Instead of asking, "Does he look young?" they start asking a different question entirely. Does this man still care about himself? That question shows up through the body, the way someone stands, the way they move, the details they maintain, and the energy they carry begin to reveal habits that developed over decades. A man who remains active in life often shows it without saying a word. His movements appear deliberate. His posture stays open. His gestures feel relaxed instead of withdrawn. Another man of the same age may appear very different. His shoulders curve forward. His steps feel heavy. His expression seems distant. None of these signals are dramatic, but together they communicate something powerful. Women notice these differences immediately. They understand that aging affects everyone. No one expects a man at 65 or 70 to look like he did at 25. That expectation simply does not exist. What they notice instead is whether a man is still engaged with life. This is why small details begin to matter more. Hands reveal grooming habits. Posture shows daily discipline. Facial expression reveals mindset. Even how someone walks across a room communicates subtle signals about energy and purpose. Psychologists often refer to this as behavioral signaling. Your body quietly communicates the routines and choices you repeat every day. And once you understand this idea, something interesting becomes clear. Attraction at this stage of life is not about trying to compete with youth. It is about showing that you have not given up on yourself. Now let's move to the first body area women mentioned in the survey. It may sound simple at first, but it communicates more about a man's life than almost anything else. The first body signal women consistently mentioned in the survey was posture. At first, some of the women almost laughed when they said it because posture sounds like such a simple thing. But the more they explained it, the clearer it became why it matters so much. Posture is often the very first signal people notice when a man enters a space. Imagine a man walking across a parking lot, standing in line at a coffee shop, or stepping through a doorway. Before anyone studies his face or notices what he is wearing, they see how his body carries itself. Are his shoulders pulled forward? Is his head leaning down? Does his upper back curve inward as if he is collapsing into himself? These small details send immediate messages. In our conversations, over 70% of the women said, posture reveals more about a man's daily life than his fitness level. That statement surprised many people. But when the women explained it, their reasoning made sense. They said, posture reflects how a man moves through life. A man who stands tall often appears mentally present and engaged with the world around him. Another man may have a strong build or broad shoulders from years in the gym, yet if his head drops forward and his upper back curves, his body language tells a completely different story. It signals fatigue, it signals withdrawal, sometimes it even signals quiet defeat. Then there is the average man. He may not have a dramatic physique. He might carry a little extra weight, but he stands straight. His chest remains open. His chin stays level. That statement surprised many people. But when the women explained it, their reasoning made sense. They said, posture reflects how a man moves through life. A man who stands tall often appears mentally present and engaged with the world around him. Another man may have a strong build or broad shoulders from years in the gym, yet if his head drops forward and his upper back curves, his body language tells a completely different story. It signals fatigue, it signals withdrawal, sometimes it even signals quiet defeat. Then there is the average man. He may not have a dramatic physique, he might carry a little extra weight, but he stands straight. His chest remains open, his chin stays level. The next body area women mentioned surprised many men in the survey. It was the hands. Several women explained that hands reveal more truth about a man than almost any other part of the body, not because of their size or strength, but because of their condition. Hands are very difficult to hide. A man can choose his clothes carefully. He can style his hair, wear a jacket that fits well, or select shoes that look sharp, but his hands are always visible during normal life. When he shakes hands with someone, when he holds a cup of coffee, when he opens a door, when he reaches for his wallet at a counter. In those small moments, women quietly notice the details. They notice whether the nails are trimmed or uneven. They notice whether the skin looks healthy or severely neglected. They notice whether the hands appear active and capable or ignored for long periods of time. One woman described it in a very direct way. She said, hands show whether a man still pays attention to the small parts of his life. That observation appeared repeatedly during the survey. After the age of 60, the hands often reveal aging earlier than other areas of the body. Veins become more visible. Skin changes texture. Age spots may appear. These are natural changes that happen to everyone, but the women explain they are not judging those changes. What they are noticing is effort. Maintaining your hands does not require hours of work. Trimming nails, smoothing rough edges, and keeping the skin reasonably healthy can take only a minute or two each week. At the same time, hands that show signs of real work can be very attractive. Calluses from lifting, building, gardening, or fixing things often communicate activity and usefulness. But neglected hands tell a different story. When nails grow uneven for months or skin becomes severely cracked without care, it suggests a man may have stopped paying attention to himself. And that small signal raises a larger question in the mind of the observer. If he ignores this detail, what else might he be ignoring? Now, the next body area on the list surprised even more people during the survey. The next body area, women mentioned in the survey, surprised many of the men who heard the results. It was the neck and jawline. In fact, more than 80% of the women said this area influences their first impression more than muscle size. That result alone caught many people off guard because most men assume women are primarily looking at the chest or shoulders. But the explanation behind it makes perfect sense. The neck and jawline reveals something deeper than appearance. They quietly reflect health, discipline, and self-control. When women look at a man's face, they naturally notice the shape of the jaw and the condition of the neck. not because they expect the sharp features someone may have had at 30 years old, but because they are observing the signals that come with age. After the age of 60, the body naturally begins to change. Skin loses elasticity, fat distribution shifts. Many men develop softness under the chin or around the neck. These changes are normal and expected. Women in the survey made one thing very clear. They are not comparing a 60-year-old man to a 25-year-old man. What they are actually noticing is effort. Some men accept aging and completely stop caring for their physical condition. Others continue making small adjustments that keep their appearance strong and balanced. Even modest improvements in body fat can reshape the jawline dramatically. Losing just a few pounds often restores definition around the chin and neck that seemed completely gone, and women notice that difference. Several women explained that the jawline and neck send a message about how a man ages himself. A defined jawline does not just signal genetics. It often signals discipline in lifestyle, nutrition, and activity. Another detail women mentioned was head position. A man whose chin constantly drops toward his chest can appear withdrawn or disengaged. But when the head stays level and aligned with the spine, it communicates presence and awareness. These small differences influence how a man is perceived before he ever speaks a word. Which leads us to the next body area on the list, a feature most men overlook entirely, but women notice in everyday situations without even thinking about it. The next body area that appeared on the list surprised many men even more than the previous ones. It was the forearms. Unlike the chest or shoulders, forearms are not something most men focus on when they think about appearance. Yet, during the survey, a large number of women said they notice a man's forearms almost immediately in everyday situations. The reason is simple. Forearms are visible during normal life. When you roll up your sleeves, open a door, carry groceries, shake hands, or reach across a table, your forearms naturally come into view. They are one of the few areas of the body that people see constantly without you realizing it. Because of that visibility, they quietly communicate something important. Women often interpret forearms as a signal of practical strength and capability, not the kind of strength displayed in a gym mirror, but the kind that suggests a man can handle real-world tasks. Strong forearms hint that a man uses his hands often, that he lifts things, fixes things, builds things, or simply stays active in daily life. One woman in the survey explained it in a very interesting way. She said, "Forearms give the impression that a man is useful and capable, and those traits are deeply attractive on a subconscious level." What surprised many men is that forearms do not need to look exaggerated or overly muscular. Women are not expecting bodybuilder proportions. What they notice is tone and activity. Forearms that show natural development often come from simple actions rather than complicated workouts. Carrying heavy items, doing yard work, using tools, gardening, climbing, or even hanging from a pull-up bar can gradually build grip strength and muscle. Those everyday activities create a look that signals real-world strength. On the other hand, when forearms appear extremely thin or inactive, it can suggest a lifestyle with very little physical engagement. And that quiet signal influences perception more than most men realize. Now, the next body area women mentioned is even more surprising because many men rarely think about it at all. Yet it sends one of the strongest subconscious signals of confidence and presence. The next body area women mentioned was something many men rarely think about directly. It was the smile. Several women explained that a man's smile immediately influences how approachable and confident he appears. It is one of the first emotional signals people notice during conversation. A smile communicates far more than simple friendliness. It reveals how comfortable a person feels with himself and with the people around him. When a man smiles naturally, it suggests ease, warmth, and openness. These qualities often make someone feel safe to continue interacting with him. Women in the survey explained that a genuine smile stands out because it involves more than the mouth. It appears in the eyes, the cheeks, and the overall expression of the face. Psychologists sometimes call this a genuine smile response. You can usually recognize it instantly. It looks relaxed rather than forced. It appears at the right moment during conversation instead of being held artificially for long periods, and it fades naturally instead of disappearing abruptly. The women also noted that a smile often reflects something deeper about a man's outlook on life. A man who smiles easily often appears more engaged and present. His expression suggests that he is comfortable interacting with people and still enjoys social moments. By contrast, a face that rarely smiles can unintentionally communicate distance or tension, even when the man himself feels perfectly normal. This does not mean a man needs to smile constantly. Excessive smiling can appear forced or nervous. What matters is authenticity. A calm, natural smile that appears at the right moment sends a powerful signal that a man is relaxed and emotionally steady, and that emotional steadiness often makes others feel comfortable around him. Now we move to the next body area women mentioned. And this one may surprise you because it reveals something deeper than physical features alone. The next body area women consistently mentioned was the eyes. Several women explained that when they notice a man for the first time, they often look at his eyes almost immediately, not to judge color or shape, but to understand something deeper about the person behind them. Eyes reveal presence. When a man looks at the world with calm focus and awareness, people sense it instantly. His gaze appears steady, relaxed, and attentive. It communicates that he is mentally present in the moment. Women in the survey describe this as one of the most powerful signals of confidence. Confidence is not always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it shows up in the quiet way someone observes the environment around him. A man who maintains relaxed eye contact during conversation often appears composed and self-assured. On the other hand, eyes that constantly shift away or appear distracted can send a different signal. When someone struggles to maintain eye contact, it may suggest discomfort, uncertainty, or a lack of engagement with the conversation. Even if those interpretations are not always accurate, the impression forms quickly. Women explained that they are not expecting intense staring or overly strong eye contact. That can actually feel uncomfortable. Instead, what stands out is balanced attention. A man who looks at someone while they speak, listens carefully, and responds naturally communicates that he is fully involved in the interaction. Another detail women mentioned was the overall expression around the eyes. Eyes that appear alert and curious suggest a man who is still engaged with life. They show interest in people and the world around him, and that quality becomes increasingly attractive with age, because after 60, women are often looking for a man who still carries curiosity and purpose. Now we move to the final body signal mentioned in the survey, and it is the one women said reveals the most about a man's character before he even says a word. Now we arrive at the body signal that women in the survey said reveals the most about a man before he even speaks. It is the way he moves. Not just how he stands still, not only how he looks physically, but how his body moves through space. Women describe this as something they notice almost immediately, often without realizing they are observing it. Movement tells a story about a person's energy and mindset. When a man walks with steady, controlled steps, his movements appear intentional. His pace is balanced, his shoulders stay open, and his head remains level rather than pointed toward the ground. That kind of movement suggests confidence and awareness. It does not require speed or athletic ability. It simply shows that the man is comfortable occupying his space. Many women explain that they can sense when a man feels confident in himself because his movements look relaxed rather than rushed. He does not appear anxious or scattered. Instead, his presence feels grounded. This type of movement often signals emotional stability. On the other hand, movement that appears hesitant or overly hurried can create a different impression. When someone constantly rushes, shuffles their steps, or moves in an uncertain way, it may unintentionally communicate stress or distraction. Even small details matter. The way a man opens a door, sits down at a table, or reaches for something on a shelf can show whether he feels composed or uncomfortable in his environment. Women in the survey repeatedly mentioned that calm, deliberate movement creates a sense of quiet authority. It suggests that the man is not trying to impress anyone. He simply moves through the world with a steady rhythm, and that steadiness often feels reassuring. Especially after the age of 60, many women said they value presence more than performance. A man who moves with patience and intention communicates that he is still fully engaged with life. Now we move to the final section where everything comes together and reveals what these 7 signals truly represent. Now that you have seen all 7 body signals women mentioned, something important becomes clear. None of these things are about perfection. They are not about having the body of a 30-year-old or competing with younger men. In fact, many of the women we spoke with explained that age itself was not the issue at all. What truly stood out to them was how a man carried himself. Every body signal we discuss tells a quiet story. Posture reveals whether a man still carries energy and purpose. Hands show whether he pays attention to the small details of self-care. The neck and jawline reflect discipline and health. Forearms hint at practical strength and capability. A natural smile shows emotional warmth. The eyes reveal awareness and presence. And the way a man moves through the world communicates confidence more clearly than words ever could. None of these require extreme effort. They come from simple habits practiced consistently over time. Standing straighter, staying active, paying attention to grooming, and remaining mentally engaged with life. Women notice these details not because they are searching for perfection, but because these signals reflect something deeper. They reflect self-respect. A man who respects himself usually carries himself differently. His posture improves, his grooming stays consistent, and his presence feels steady. That steadiness becomes attractive because it shows that he has not given up on himself or on life. And that is something many women admire deeply. If you take one idea from this entire discussion, let it be this. Improvement does not stop at any age. Small adjustments made consistently can transform the way people see you and the way you see yourself. So, begin with simple actions. Stand taller, pay attention to details, stay active, remain curious about the world around you. These habits quietly strengthen your presence, and that presence often becomes the most powerful signal of all. Before you go, I would like to ask you something. If you watch this video all the way to the end, write "watch" till the end in the comments so I can see who stayed with me through the entire conversation. And also, tell me where you are watching from. I always enjoy seeing how far these ideas travel around the world. If you found this helpful, remember to like the video, subscribe to Personality Psychology with Isabella, and stay tuned for more insights about human behavior, attraction, and real-life psychology. Thank you for being